Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today you join me on my new campaign water, and as you can see behind me, it's a very cold, damp winter's day. The lake behind me is an old Cheshire pit and is just over 50 acres in size. The depths vary a lot, from being a couple of feet deep in places up to 30 feet deep in others. The size of the fish in here is a little bit of a mystery to me. All I know, it's a low stock venue of around 130 to 150 carp. I've heard that it can be a very challenging place to get a bite, but that being said, I'm going to put the hours in and give it a go. Today though, I'm only here to walk the bank and get a feel for the place, as I plan to start my campaign in the spring. At the moment, we're in the middle of winter and we've just had a very long cold spell, so I've still got a couple of months to wait until I get started. I only live 40 minutes away, so it's not too far for me to get a bit of pre-baiting going before I start my time on here. Anyway, the main reason I'm here today is to tell you about a trip that we had back in April. It was the start of spring and me, Mike, Matty and Curly travelled to France to a lake that holds some absolute monsters. We're talking well over 80 pounds. The lake is called Angel's Lake. It's an hour south of Limoges and it's an all-inclusive fishery. So all we had to do was pack a bag and hop on a plane. Before we get started, I'll give you one more look at this lovely venue behind me. Right then, that's enough from this place. Let's catch up with the lads and get this France trip started. So after meeting up with the lads, it was time to grab a bite to eat and drive the 2-hour journey to East Midlands Airport. After checking in and a quick couple of beers, it was time to board the plane. After a nice short flight from the UK, we were met at Limoges Airport by Dennis. Dennis is the bailiff at Angel Lakes and he takes care of you whilst you were there. The first day absolutely flown by, and when we got to the lake it was getting late. The first thing we did was purchase some bait, hire a bait boat and get the rods set up, all in time for Dennis to cook us our tea. Nobody was expecting too much on the first night, so we decided to chill out, have a drink and enjoy the start of our holiday. When we woke up at first light, you could see how cold it had been the night before. The lake was covered in mist and our water buckets and cradles were frozen over. Luckily for us, we'd expected the temperatures might drop, so we came prepared and brought our winter clothes. I was fishing in peg 1 and Mike was next to me in peg 2. Matty was in peg 3 and Curly in peg 4. With there being so many big fish in the lake, we were all keen to see what lay ahead. And as the sun started to peek over the trees, it was clear to see just how peaceful this place was. So as the sun rose high in the sky on our first morning, the mist started to clear and the lake looked very calm. The main lake is 7 acres in size and has 5 fishable swims. There is also a stock pond which sits behind the main lake. Both lakes are surrounded by beautiful French countryside and we were all happy to have a week there to relax. Swims 1 and 2 are close together. They are situated over by the cabin and toilet block. Swims 3 and 4 are on the opposite side of the lake and both sit on a pontoon in the water. Swim 5 is the opposite side of the toilet block in the shallow end of the lake, and in my opinion looks a very nice swim. Being as the weather was cold on our arrival, we all chose to leave that swim alone as it's the shallower water to the rest of the lake. With this being an all-inclusive fishery, all the rods and bibbies are already set up on the pegs before your arrival. I will do a walk around the lake later in the video to show you each individual peg and what water is available to fish, so stay tuned for that. As I peered across the lake from my bivvy, I jumped up to the sound of my alarm giving off a few bleeps. I raced over to the rods thinking I'm in early, but unfortunately it was just a few liners, and if I'd have struck there wouldn't have been anything there. So as you can see, it was a cold morning, but it didn't stop the fish from bossing out through the night. The sound these big carp make whilst jumping is a lot louder than the lakes that I fished back in the UK, and it was good to hear. Now my favourite time of being at a lake is early morning. I find that if you get up that little bit earlier, you can see the lake in its most peaceful. You can't beat watching the sunrise over a calm, misty lake. It's also a very productive time to get a bite, so it's well worth getting up for. Now the only items you need to bring on this trip are clothes, a sleeping bag, end tackle and some hook baits. Boilies and pellets are sold on site and you can buy your bait off Dennis whenever you need it. This bait is also a part of the carp's diet, so they are used to eating it. When you get to your peg, each rod is already set up with a PB hit and run leader. At the end of the leader there is a lead clip, so all you have to do is attach a lead and your preferred rig, then you're good to go. You can also bring any liquids and glugs with you. The cabin also stocks end tackle and hook baits, so don't worry if you forget anything. So why did we choose Angel Lakes? Well, Matty and Curly had both been there a couple of times in the past and both had good catches between them. Now the amount of big fish that are in this lake is impressive. There's loads of 50s, 60s, 70s and the record is well over 80 pounds. This was enough for me and Mike to come and have a crack at it ourselves. Now it's no secret that when you do some research on the place, you'll see a lot of the fish get caught out of peg 3. The reason for this is that there's a large tree in the water and the carp like to hold up there in the snags. Both Matty and Curly agree that this is a great peg to get a bite, but both agreed that it's not their favourite peg on the lake. The reason for this is you have to fish locked up and be on your guard at all times, day or night. As you're here for a week, it isn't the most relaxing of swims. So we all agreed to make it fair, we would rotate swims and give everyone a chance to fish the snags in peg 3. First up was Matty, and as expected, he was first to see some action. On the second day, he managed to hook one from the snags. Unfortunately though, he got cut off and lost it. As the second day came to an end, Matty was unable to catch out of peg 3. He didn't have long either, because in the morning, him and Curly was to change swims. So after a wet start to the day, Curly got set up on peg 3, putting his rigs out by bait boat and directing his rigs towards the snags. And it didn't take long for a bit of action to come his way.
You in? This one's going as well. Oh, wait, get that one.
Well, as you can see, it doesn't always go to plan. I'm not actually sure what happened, but both rods had a slow take at the same time, and both resulted with nothing on the end. This was happening on other pegs too. Me and Mike were still getting a few liners, but no screaming runs. As day 3 came to an end, there was still no fish on the bank, but we all knew we still had plenty of time left, so we're all still feeling confident of a bite or two. With it being wet and cloudy all day, it was nice to see the sun again as the evening set in. So we were 3 days in without any fish, and it was really unlucky for Curly to miss his first bite. He must have got cross lines from both to be going off at the same time like that. Things were pretty much quiet throughout the night as well. You could still hear them boshing, but catching one was a different story. The next morning it was time for me to switch pegs with Curly and go into peg 3. But before our move, we met in the cabin for some breakfast and picked each other's brains about how each other was fishing. The big difference with this morning to the previous days was how warm it was. The sun was beaming down on the water and you could feel the heat, so we were all hopeful that the change in the weather would wake the carp up. After eating our breakfast, it was time to switch swims and enjoy the day ahead. After being on peg 1 for the last 4 days, it was a nice change to be in peg 3. I put fresh baits on each rig and fished towards the snag tree. Just as I got my third rod out, I heard a shout from the opposite side. It was Curly and he was into a fish. Well, that didn't take him long to get a bite, did it? And I've just blanked on that peg for 4 days. Oh well, at least it's still good to see someone catching. So the first French carp of our trip was in the net. It was a nice dark one weighing 27 pounds and Curly was buzzing to be the first to catch. So a big congratulations to him. Now, as nice as the fish was, by French standards it was no giant. And when speaking to Dennis, he reckoned it was the smallest fish in the lake, which is pretty mad when you think of it.
Hey, did you have it on?
With Curly off the mark, it was time for the rest of us to get back to it and try and get one of our own. I had a liner pretty much straight away, but again it didn't fully take.
That didn't lift as much as you're thinking of.
What was it?
Middle.
Middle, yeah.
Yeah.
The weather continued to be warm throughout the day, and as day turned to evening, I decided to move the rods away from the snags and into open water. I now didn't have to fish locked up, so I could relax. After watching the bats for a while, I decided to have an early night and catch up on some sleep. So after a few hours sleep, I was woken up by Matty shouting me. He was in at last. I shot out of bed and went over to give him a hand. With the full moon shining bright in the sky, it was a perfect setting for catching a big common. I could tell by the way the fish was pulling that this was no small carp, and as it broke the surface, you could tell it was huge.
Come on, get in that net, bro. It's a chunk. Nice.
With a mega common like this in the net, we thought it would be best to wake Dennis. And fair play to him, even though it was 1 o'clock in the morning, he was still keen to help and check out the fish. Dennis likes to have a look at any big fish that gets caught, just so we can keep a track on how healthy they are and to see if they're gaining weight.
58.12.
At 58 pounds, it is a fish of a lifetime, and a new PB for Matty. A fish he will always remember. Well done, mate. Well, what a difference a day makes. The weather definitely had the fish feeding more than the previous days, and it was great to be there when Matty caught his PB and share the moment with him. So as day 5 approached, it was Mike's turn to have a go in peg 3. The most popular peg on the lake was yet to produce a fish, even though that morning I did have a screaming run in my open water swim, but I just struck into nothing. So I was absolutely gutted about that, especially as Mike was up bright and early to switch pegs with me. So now I was in peg 2, I could see Mike putting his rods out towards the snag tree in peg 3. Being as I missed a run earlier that morning in open water, I wasted no time getting my rods back on the same spots. The weather really was hotting up now, so it was time to kick back, relax and have a cheeky sunbathe. Boom! I was in at last, and after waiting 5 days for this fish, I was not going to lose it. The fish felt really heavy and hugged the bottom of the lake well. I was not in a rush to bully it though, so I applied just enough pressure to guide it gently away from the snags on my left. This was by far the biggest fish I've ever hooked, and it was turning out to be a mega battle. But as I could feel the fish starting to tire, I knew it was only time till it was in that net.
Yes. Yes.
Yes! Well then, Willits.
There you go, £65, absolute beast. Oh, what can I say? I wasn't expecting to catch a 65 pounder. That fish is going to take some beating, and it might possibly be the biggest fish that I ever catch. Honestly, I'd be more than happy catching 40s and 50s. But at the same time, if you're fishing a water where there are big fish, you're always in with a chance of catching one. Dennis had to go to town that day, so Paul, the owner, helped us out with the fish. Paul was telling me that the lake is now a big fish water, and it's not as easy to bag up like it used to be. You used to be able to have big hits of 30s, 40s and 50s. But now some of these fish are 30 pound bigger, they've got a lot wiser and harder to catch. He also said a lot of the liners we've been having will be the carp mouthing the bait with their massive mouths. With so many big fish in here though, put the effort in and you could catch a fish of a lifetime. So with 2 PBs being smashed on the same day, that evening at dinner, we decided to celebrate with a bottle of Jack Daniels and a few beers. Happy days. Now, in all honesty, I've not done Dennis's cooking any justice here, filming the pie and chips night. Throughout the week, Dennis has cooked us some lovely meals. A full English breakfast or baguette in the morning, and a different tea each evening, all served with a tasty French stick. Compliments to the chef. So with one more day to go, Mike was starting to feel the pressure and Curly was also keen to get into a big one as well. The lake was still changing as the weather got even hotter and you could see more and more wildlife start to appear. At one point I saw 3 snakes within an hour, which actually reminds me of a funny story. So when I'm in my bivvy, whether it's day or night, I leave the door open. Usually you get a few mosquitoes and a couple of spiders, but they don't really bother me. Anyway, I'm in the bivvy, sitting on my bed chair, and I could hear a scratching noise coming from inside the bivvy. Then it stopped. So I sat there still, thinking it's probably me making the noise, and then it started again. It sounded like it was right above me, in between the liner and the bivvy. Being as I'd just seen these snakes, like not that long ago, I thought there was a snake in the bivvy, in the liner, right above my head, so I just shot out that door. And it was funny because when I turned round, looked at the bivvy, I could see that it was 2 little lizards that were running on top of the bivvy, and it was their little claws making the noise. So it was panic over. Like I say, with the good weather, there was loads of wildlife present and the lake seemed to come alive.
Got enough of every melody, they all sound the same. Yeah. For my broken heart, no remedy, but maybe if you stay, we can get away with it. 'Cause you make me love my imperfections, answer all my questions, just to show me what's on the other side of inhibition. No apologies, my baby. I do you do 'cause I'm feeling so cool.
So as we came into our last 24 hours, Curly decided to rebait his rods one last time and was feeling hopeful of catching another one. With the lake feeling like summertime and the midday sun at its hottest, I decided to catch up with Mike and have a film around the lake. Right, then let's walk you through some of the pegs. I'll start you at the shallow end of the lake. It's called the bay. And this is peg 5. Let's have a little walk down here now. It's a new peg, made out of stone. To be fair, like, it's a really nice sized peg for you on your own. Bivvy, everything's supplied here. It's all inclusive. Smart peg this. And at night, they have been absolutely boshing out just down there, right into the bay. It's shallow, the sun's up, so they've been enjoying it, to be fair. And that is peg 5. Here we are at peg 1. This is the peg I started in. There's a lot of water out in peg 1. You're right next door to the cabin, look. That's where you have your dinner, or your drinks. There's a fridge in there. Another big size peg. And this has the biggest bivvy on the lake. Absolutely huge in there. I do miss that bivvy, but we did decide that we was going to move pegs, try and give everyone a chance in the snags. So it's all fair. Right, that's peg 1. Right, this is peg 2. This is my current peg. And it's another social peg, this one, because it's right next door to peg 1. you sort of share the same areas with the rods, but in peg 2 I've got one right up there in the snags, and then I've got one 3/4 out, and then I've got one 3/4 out towards peg 3 over there, and then peg 1 he's fishing 2 rods in between the 2 pegs there, peg 3 and 4, and then he's fishing one mid just past peg 4 there. So, but if you speak to Dennis, he'll put you on spots. He's really good like that. Right, it's going to have a little walk round to peg 3 now, see how Mike's getting on. And that is the main snag of peg 3. A lot of big carp hold up in this snag. You do see the tails and them just basking in it, but if you fish the opposite side of it, it is strangely clear the opposite side, but you have to fish locked up, because if they go in that snag, you are not seeing them again. There's one right in there now, but see if the camera can pick it up. Right in there. Just lying there, I don't know if you can see it. That is an absolute unit. Right, this is peg 3, Mike's peg at the moment, and that's fishing out there in between that white pole and the snag tree. Popular spot this, because it produces quite a lot of fish, but I finding it tricky at the moment, but I'm sure the fish will turn up on this peg. And there you go, you can see opposite there, pegs 1 and 2 in the cabin. And this is his stock pond up here. This is a really nice lake in itself. I've seen Dennis go out and feed him in the boat. It's full of fish in here. But they grow them on till they get to a decent weight, then put them in the main lake. And that spurs the older fish to have to feed. And here we have peg 4. Let's have a walk down to it. It's another one that's on the water. It commands a lot of water, this peg. Right in front of me is the bay and peg 5, but if no one's fishing peg 5, like no one's on it today, you get the bay and you get this little side area where there's an old peg over there. And that's shallow there. And last night they were just boshing all the way down there and right at the back there. They're doing it because the weather's picked up, because the first few days there was no signs of fish down there at all, but the last few days really nice weather, and he's definitely got the fish moving around the lake. And there's your bivvy. And the boat, definitely advise hiring a boat here, because there's so many snags and areas you just want the bait bang on. In all fairness, it's a nice little lap around the lake. These are where the old swims are. And like, that takes you to one. Sure, this takes you to the other one. Well, just as I'd finished walking around the lake, I could hear the scream from Mike's alarm. He was finally in, and whatever he had on the end looked super heavy. Mike had been waiting a long time for this bite, and as soon as I saw the fish surface, I could tell it was one of the big ones.
You're gonna walk her back, Mike. You ready, yeah? Go for it, bro.
Get in! Yes, Mike! Come on! Hey!
Well, in,
Let's have a look at that in the net.
it's probably about 60 again, then.
So another big carp was in the net and Mike was buzzing. Not only is this carp a blank saver, but it was looking very likely to be the third PB of the trip. Well, this immaculate looking fish looked big in the water and even bigger in the cradle. All that was left to do now was get it weighed. Wow, what a catch. A 70-pound carp, an absolute beauty. Well done, Mike. Get in. Well, what a way to end the trip. I'm so glad Mike caught a fish in the end. He just had to hang on in there, and at £70, that fish was a crazy size carp. We had such a good week at Angel Lakes, and I would definitely recommend the place to anybody that wants to try and beat their PB. I would just like to thank Paul and Dennis for being great hosts. They really do put the effort in, and you can tell that in how well the place is kept. So hopefully we will return in the future. Now, before I go, I just want to say a special thank you to someone, my dad, Nick Willis. When I was out in France, I had a call off my dad, but unfortunately it wasn't good news. My dad hadn't been well for a while, and he told me that he'd been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Sadly, a few months later, he passed away. Now, it was my dad that first took me fishing when I was about 6 years old, and he taught me how to float fish. And we would have many a good days at the lake catching roach, perch and gudgeon. As I got older and got into carp fishing, my dad would drive me and my mates all over the place, mainly to fisheries that I'd read about in magazines, and honestly, without his help, I wouldn't be enjoying my fishing today. When the weather warms up, I'm definitely going to be taking my lads on more fishing trips, because I think the world needs more tackle boxes and less X boxes. I'll see you in the next video.